In the sweltering summers of 1910, the entire Pacific Northwest was a tinderbox ready to ignite, and Wallace, Idaho was no exception. It was here, during the largest, most devastating fire in U.S. history, that tales of heroism were as numerous as the sparks. And yet one man's tale of heroism stands head and shoulders above the rest. That man was Ed Pulaski. Edward Crockett Pulaski was born on the 9th of February, 1868 in the town of Green Springs, Ohio. His mother's name was Celia Crockett, and his father's name was Rudolph Pulaski. Rudolph was the son of Polish immigrants and a collateral descendant of Casimir Pulaski, a famous general of the Revolutionary War. Edward was the older brother of 3 sisters and 1 brother. He attended 1 year of high school near the town of Marshall before leaving to Idaho in search for work. At the young age of 16, Pulaski arrived at Murray in the panhandle of Idaho. He came in search of wealth from the gold rush in 1884. Pulaski was always moving during his early years in Idaho. In 1808, he attempted to enlist in the Spanish-American War while in Boise, but was declined. He was in the North by 1889. This time he was in Coeur d'Alene. It was here where he met his wife, Emma Zenobia Dickinson, whom he married in 1900. With her was her daughter from a previous marriage, Elsie. With his new wife and daughter, Pulaski decided to settle down and join the Forest Service. Between 1908 and his retirement in 1930, he oversaw the Coeur d'Alene River District. From his time between his arrival in Idaho and his joining the Forest Service, Pulaski had worked 24 years in miscellaneous mining and ranching jobs. Over his 22-year career in the Forest Service, Pulaski had a distinguished record of service. However, he will always be remembered by his actions during the summer of 1910. The summers of 1910 were some of the hottest and driest on records, which leads to an exceptionally severe fire season. Fires broke out all across the inland Northwest, spanning Montana, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. The Forest Service, which had only been organized 5 years prior, was extremely ill-equipped to deal with such a serious situation. The situation only became worse when on August 20th, hurricane-force winds raced across many fires burning uncontrollably, fueling and combining the fires into a single, devastating blaze that moved as fast as the wind that had created it, and devoured anything that its path crossed. This was the big blow-up. During this time, Pulaski was charged with leading a group of 45 men to save the town of Wallace from impending destruction. Women and children were evacuated by train. The situation was desperate. After the fires, Pulaski wrote a personal account of his experience and how he saved his men. That afternoon, wind swept the mountains in circles and joined the fires. The whole world seemed to us men back in those mountains to be aflame. It would have been worse than foolhardy to attempt to fight the fires. It was a case of saving our lives. My one hope was to reach an old mine tunnel which I knew to be not far from us. We raced for it. Outside the tunnel, the canyon was a raging furnace. The mine timbers caught fire, so I stood at the entrance and hung wet blankets over the opening, trying to keep the flames back by filling my hat with water. The men were in a panic of fear, some crying, some praying. Many were soon unconscious from the terrible heat, smoke, and fire gas. The wet blankets actually caught fire, and I had to replace them with others, but I, too, finally sank down unconscious. I remember hearing a man say, "Come outside, boys, the boss is dead." I replied, "Like hell he is." Pulaski led his surviving men down the mountain back to what remained of Wallace. The town of Wallace was devastated, but most of its inhabitants had been evacuated. They had been given enough time to escape with the valiant efforts of those like Pulaski. Pulaski died on February 2nd, 1931 at the age of 63, after retiring from the Forest Service just a year prior. His legacy, however, still lives on. The Pulaski tool that bears his name is still in use by firefighters today.